Alrighty lads, so I did hear that the JP side of things gave us a couple of buffs, and I have not heard, I guess, the best things about them. As you guys may or may not know, I like to kind of go into these blinds, so that way I can kind of give my initial thoughts upon seeing what they gave some of these servants, like if I think it'll be good, or if it has some potential, or if it's just something that's kind of middling, you know, something along those lines. I think it's very interesting for, like, say, newer players, or even experienced players, to just kind of get thoughts from someone that's been playing the game, you know, for years on end, you know, probably playing a little bit too much. But from what I've heard, it seems as though people are not too fond of Emiya's buff, which I know is one of his skills. I think it's the dodge skill. Geronimo, from what I've heard, people have told me that I was on to something, right? We did that video, that hot fix on Geronimo, and apparently I was cooking, right? So I'm hoping that that makes one of his skills targetable. I can see that it's his quick skill right here, but if they said I'm cooking, I think I might be onto something. And then I know that Yugioh got an NP buff. Apparently, he's still pretty solid. Like, he was a burst damage servant, but now he's even better at being a burst damage servant. So let's just kind of get into this and see what we're working with. So, okay, so it is his dodge skill, because these are already buffed, and these are, like, unchanged. This, you know, this already has its, you know, 2 buffs. This already has the big crit damage. So, yeah, okay. One of the unfortunate things for Emiya is that he has the defensive version of Eye of the Mind, you know, because 18% defense is really not the biggest deal. You know, you'd rather him have just the amount of crit damage you're usually getting on the other version of Eye of the Mind. So, if they're giving him, let's see here, a nice 30% defense, 30% attack, and 40 stars on this skill, that's certainly very powerful in a vacuum. Although, here's my thing. I think a lot of people will see this buff for Emiya and say, no battery, still mid. Because I don't think Emiya's mid. I still break him out every now and then. I kind of put him in the qualification of a very powerful servant that you probably won't use very often, but he is very strong. I mean, this skill in and of itself, with the high hits on his NP, allow him to effectively star bomb whenever he fires the NP, and then he can do some pretty decent crits, you know, with 100% crit damage on clapping back on enemies. What I think they intend for you to do with him is to swap to arts, right, using his third skill over here, refund most of your NP back, because his natural, his natural NP gain is not the craziest, but 10 hits on an NP, especially an arts NP, are gonna kind of make up for that a little bit, and then they want you to refund as much back as possible, then fire a buster NP to quote-unquote do more damage. And then, you know, that seems to be what they want you to do, instead of just using him as a normal farmer. But, I mean, this is still solid. Like, this is fine. Even though they're not giving him a battery and everything, sure, is he going to be, like, a meta contending servant? Someone that people are going to be like, you gotta have Emiya. No, like, he's not going to be, like, your Gilgamesh's. He's not going to be your Teslas. Or, technically, because he could swap to arts, you know, he's not going to be competing with, like, your Melusines and your Ibukis. But I think it's a little bit boring if every servant is doing the same thing. And so, the fact that we have Emiya as more of an AoE archer that's more built for, say, going into CQs that have numerous enemies, I think that's a fine niche for him to have, because, again, I think he occupies it rather well, right? Again, and being a 4-star that is, well, on every single banner, right? As you would see that he would say, like, story locked or whatever up there. This is going to help out, I think, a lot of players, right? Because going from 18% to 30% defense does mean that if you have more of a limited box, you know, say your only support is Waver, that defense being up to 30%, playing around with not only Waver's own defensive buff, but his damage cut, you know, because once you reach 100% defense, you know, you take no damage while you have that up. I think that's going to benefit a lot of people. The attack buff is going to allow him to do even more damage than he's already doing. And then having on-demand stars is really good for your opening turn. I think the only thing that's a little awkward is that this is tied to his evasion. I do not like that, because it might cause you to waste it. But aside from that, I think Emiya still has a rather strong kit. I think if you just wanted him to be a farming servant, that's understandable, right? I have those gripes with servants all the time. I mean, when Takeda Shingen came out, I thought he was a little bit disappointing. I loved his design and I loved the event, but I was like, oh man, they built this guy as like a really strong AoE rider, but he's just not very good in farming. And that was kind of when I realized that, you know, maybe not every servant is built to be, you know, in these niches for being able to do CQs, being able to do farming and all that good stuff. So, I don't know. I think this is a fine buff. I don't think he's, like, particularly, like, worse off or anything. Not going to be a meta farmer or anything along those lines, but if you have Emiya, you like using him, it's a solid buff to toss his way. I'm excited to see Geronimo's. So I saw it was the quick one, which is the third skill. Oh my goodness. go back to the FGO hotfix video, which I do want to go ahead and bring back. I want to bring that series back on trying to fix out some older servants. But when I was talking about Geronimo, I went through all of his skills. I'm like, we make them all targetable and we give them, you know, effects that kind of tie in with the card type. Now, for the quick one, I was thinking maybe they give you, you know, crit damage, maybe they give you, you know, a star bomb, something along those lines. Reducing skill cooldown, that's still pretty good. I mean, that is one of the reasons that Tamamo to this day is still able to kind of hold her weight as an art support. You know, you guys know that I run propaganda over here on the channel for Tamamo, you know, doing a couple of those clears being like, yeah, look, you could bring Tamamo, you know, you don't have to do double cast or you don't have to bring Lady Avalanche, you can still get the job done. You know, but it's one of the reasons she still holds up. So again, Geronimo's not going to be, you know, broken, nutty, anything along those lines out the gate. This is going to be one of those things that we need to see what they do with the other skills over here. Because if it's kind of tame like this one, and they're just like, oh, we just kind of toss one thing over there, and then he's targetable, it might be kind of a nice gimmicky servant. But if they want to start giving him like really powerful effects tied to these, and again, I kind of would have preferred if these were 3 times for like 1 turn or something along those lines. Or like 3 times for 3 turns, my bad. Because 1 turn is like, it kind of makes him kind of feel like he's going to be more of a gimmicky support, but he's a free to play. So, you know, if everybody has access to this guy, at worst case scenario, he's like a plug suit option, I think that's fine. I don't really see the harm in that. But again, still not a very good servant, but hey, step in the right direction. You know, we are doing something with him now. He can actually contribute to the team a little bit, so do like to see that. And then let's go to Yugioh, which I do actually have to look at his NP at base, because I use Yugioh every now and then because I like to use him in duels because of his NP. His NP is still one of the sickest ones in the game for me, but it's been a fat minute since I've looked at it. Okay, so, you know, okay, we're reducing attack. So we're gaining Pierce Invul, and we're reducing their arts resistance by 20% for 3 turns, as well as also getting the higher damage scaling. This is strong. This actually gives them a little bit of sustainability, because if you go and you look at all of these, like look at like 1 turn buff, 1 turn buff, and then you look over here. I mean, well, I mean, this isn't damage, but again, 1 turn buff. He's very much a burst damage servant. Like, you want him to just do a lot of damage when you have all the skills up. This gives him a little bit of extra staying power, because every time you fire the NP, and if you're refunding it off of something like, say, the 3rd skill when the first one's also up at the same time, you're going to be sitting pretty. You know, you're going to refund, pretty much your entire NP back if you can find your arts cards. And that means every follow-up NP, I mean, well, also, you're going to do refunding if you're rocking, like, Castor, or you're rocking, like, Lady Avalon's, your Tamamos, people along those lines. But subsequent MPs are going to do, stable damage, right? Like, even though you're losing out on the arts buff, you're losing out on the attack buff because they fall off after a turn, you still have damage you're building up. And Pierce Invul, I mean, that kind of just makes sense for Suigetsu. Reading through, some of the 1.5 chapters going through Shimosa, kind of just feels like he should have had something along those lines. Like, I'm really surprised he didn't at least have sure hits on anything over here, right? Like, I'm sure if you've read that, it's kind of insane how he's like one of the last hurdles that Masashi has to fight. She can Pierce Invul and everything, and my guy can't even get sure hit on his NP. So, all right, cool. We can give him Pierce Invincibility. I think that's fairly strong for him, but I don't think it's like, oh, he's going to be like dummy nutty broken. Like, will he be able to output some really good damage? Of course. Is Pierce Invincibility very strong for a DPS servant like him? Yeah, it's built into his NP, so no dodges or invuls, even if they are unremovable, are going to be able to stop him. They're not going to be able to slow him down. But again, he still is very much going to be a burst damage servant. Like, whenever you do have some of those skills up, I think you're going to see some very impressive turns. He actually might be pretty good with Tamamo, because I'm looking at his skills now. They all have a 5-turn cooldown, and Tamamo giving you the skill cooldowns on our own NP might actually help this guy out a lot, letting you do your burst turns more frequently. I might actually try that out a little bit. I think I do have Yugioh on the JP side of things. I don't think I have him on... Oh, no, I have him on NA. I know that much. I did summon for him when he came out, but I'm not sure if I have him on JP, so I might go test that out over there. But overall, Yugioh, very strong buff for him. It kind of just locks him in as a very, very strong, single... Wait, I just noticed that his attack is 9999999. That's really funny, sorry. I get distracted really easily, but I think it's going to solidify his role and where he's at as a burst damaging, saber. Nothing too insane, but it is very, very strong. Geronimo could be a good step in the right direction. Who knows? Emiya, I think, is very solid, but it's not really letting him do anything new. You know, he's not really diversifying out and like, oh, well, now he's going to be a really insane farmer, or like, now he's like going to be this monster going into, you know, challenge quests and whatnot. It's like, yeah, the additional attack buff, he'll do more damage. You know, he'll be a little bit more tanky, which I guess is supposed to offset the fact that if you pop this, you're going to lose the evasion after a turn. The 40 Star Bomb might have like some fun things you're able to do with that as well, but I don't know, he's kind of already able to do that. But again, having immediate access to stars, I don't think anybody's going to really complain about that. So I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Yeah, and with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice one. And oh, wait a minute, there is another video coming out later today. It's just a little summon video that we did on stream for, you know, Oberon. And let's just say I never lose.